All right, we're going to start in a minute. If someone can just let me know you can hear me all right, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, I think we'll get started. The last few people are coming in. All right. Welcome everyone to Accessible Design with Adobe Captivate. My name is Matt Farley. I'm an accessibility consultant with World Campus Learning Design.
And my name is Bill Egan. I'm an instructional designer with World Campus Learning Design.
And just to give you guys a little background, this is part of a webinar series hosted primarily by TLT and World Campus, I believe, this month. So there's a lot of other accessibility trainings out there. I don't have the schedule in front of me right now, but if you found this, I'm assuming you know where to find those. And if you know of anyone who might be interested in this but couldn't make it, there will be a recording with captions available fairly soon. And just to give you a little more background, we gave a similar version of this presentation in Learning Design Summer Camp over the summer. So if you saw that, this might be repeat information for you, but hopefully most of you are going to learn something from this. We are part of an exploratory group within World Campus Learning Design that for about the last year, we've been looking at the use of Adobe Captivate in our online courses with a primary focus on making sure we're building accessible content and integrating it into Canvas in an accessible way. So I'm going to kick it off to Bill to start off the talk.
Thank you, Matt. Before we kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of everything, quick introduction to Adobe Captivate. Adobe Captivate is an authoring tool used to create e-learning content. You can do software demonstrations, simulations, branching scenarios, randomized quizzes. It really is mobile friendly. It can be responsive, and there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to outputs. Things like videos, MP4s, Flash-based, which we know isn't quite desirable, but it also does do HTML5, which is huge for our accessibility exploration. A simpler way to look, or the way I kind of explain that you'll see, but there's just a lot more you can do it. There's a lot more interactivity that can come with it. As far as versioning of Captivate, we were currently and are still using Captivate 9, but Captivate 2017 just came out not too long ago, maybe about a month or two ago or so. We're going to be hopefully getting our hands on the latest version of it and moving forward, but everything that you're going to see today is kind of based off of our exploration with Captivate 9. As far as where you could get access to Captivate, if you just go through the regular Adobe site, it might be kind of expensive, but this is a piece of software that can be accessed through Penn State itself at definitely a cheaper rate, as you can see in that screenshot there. As you can see, kind of very friendly, very similar to PowerPoint with the way the slides are on the left. You can see kind of the responsive view up top with a desktop version and two different sizes for a mobile version, a phone and maybe a tablet up there. Very easy kind of click buttons to get where you want. Nothing very too daunting. So it's very streamlined and kind of makes you comfortable if you're comfortable with PowerPoint. So as Matt mentioned, we're exploring Adobe Captivate. So we wanted to explore Captivate to accomplish a few goals. One of them that we wanted to expand the capability of learning design staff to create these low-level multimedia or interactives for our courses. Something that can be a quick turnaround time, something that can be mocked up fairly quickly. Pedagogy, of course, we want to kind of get more creative, more interactive, more student engagement is always a goal when we're designing courses. We also see needs for Adobe Captivate maybe to create storyboards, enhance collaboration and efficiencies in course design. So maybe if we have a higher end idea of a concept, we can maybe mock it up in Captivate, test it out, see how it works, use that as a starting and foundation if we want to develop and design higher level different interactives. And then of course along the way through our exploration we want to identify best practice, hopefully maybe come up with different templates and kind of define some processes around how to design and develop within Captivate. So you might ask, why Captivate? Captivate is an industry-leading e-learning tool in education, and definitely has been in practice in corporate entities. Can you guys still hear me okay? Somebody said my mic was cutting out. Is this okay?
Every minute you're kind of just freezing for a few seconds.
Oh, Penn State Wireless, this is great. All right, let me try this. Better?
Yeah, you're good right now.
Okay. Yell if it cuts out again. All right, so back to why Cap. Like I said, it's an industry standard, especially in a lot of corporate environments when it comes to e-learning. And for us, version 9, when they moved from version 8 to version 9, it solved a lot of accessibility issues. Captivate for a long time was very much grounded in Flash, which we know isn't really the best when it comes to accessibility. So with that upgrade, they really put a focus on their platform being a lot more accessible. So that kind of gave us a green light to, hey, let's explore it and see if it really is accessible. And there's also a large amount of resources and user groups that we could, apply this to across different programs and courses. During our exploration, we've been doing our own documentation. Adobe provides a lot, but we've kind of started creating our own draft of a Captivate design guide, finding our best practices. We've done a lot of testing when it comes to screen readers, so we've definitely wanted to kind of define our own best practices with screenshots and things of that nature. Adobe might say that things are accessible, but you don't really know until you kind of explore yourself and kind of do the testing yourself. So we want to make sure we kind of document what we come across. I see there's one question as far as how Articulate compares. I know Matt has done accessibility testing on Articulate storyline content. From what I have heard and have seen, I haven't worked very much in storyline, but I believe that might be Flash-based. And I know we've had trouble with accessible content from storyline in the past.
It seems like a similar story where it was really inaccessible in the past, and they've made strides recently, but we haven't really been able to test the most recent versions, and any output I've tested has been really inaccessible, but I could easily say the same thing about Captivate. It's really about knowing some of the intricacies of how to make your content accessible from the ground up. So that's not to say it's impossible to make Articulate content accessible. I just haven't really seen a great example of it yet, and we haven't really been able to test the latest versions like we have with Captivate. So I can't really speak really thoroughly on that subject. I just know that there's a lot of the same issues that Captivate has had in the past.
And from a design standpoint, Captivate, you can use it on a Mac or a PC. I've designed and developed using a Mac. I know in the past, Storyline was only PC based. I don't know if they're changing that or have changed that, but that might be a consideration if you're kind of looking at the tool or the two tools. Captivate, one of the great aspects that they provide is that there's a lot of different templates and assets. You can customize a lot of different project templates that are already available for you, and you can choose from a lot of different assets. Things like different button styles, characters, you'll see on the right there. If you're doing different role play, decision-based scenarios, you can kind of choose different characters in different forms and kind of put them in there for to create those stories. Games, you can see in the bottom there, there's different kind of game templates. There's a ton of different interactions, things like timelines, drag and drops, quizzing, carousels, a bunch of different layouts and themes that you can add, and there's already background and templates for scenarios. And Matt will probably discuss more as far as accessibility of some of these things, but just for the introduction to Captivate and the basis of it, there's a lot that you can choose from that they provide for you to kind of be a starting point as you start to design content in this platform.
All right, so we found out from some of the initial setup, there are a few basic things you need to do before you can really start your Captivate project if you are thinking about accessibility, which you should be. Any project you create, you need to go into the publish settings and check the enable accessibility checkbox. And don't be misled, this is not a magic solution that makes your project accessible. This really just enables a lot of the features that you need to add accessible content. Like it allows you to add off-screen text for screen readers and make sure things are read in the correct order and things like that. Another really important thing we found was some of the templates we were using initially were really not accessible, and we had a hard time pinpointing what was causing some of the issues with assistive technology. And that is probably just because there's so many layers built up and so many elements already in the template, it's hard to really know where to start. So what we did is kind of build it from the ground up. We started with a blank template and added layers in one at a time, testing in each phase. And that way we could really pinpoint if something caused some sort of issue with a screen reader or anything else. We were able to narrow down what was making things inaccessible. That's not to say all of the templates in there are inaccessible or they couldn't be made accessible. They are just a little bit of a difficult starting place, especially if you're new to Captivate and if you're really wanting to go through the iterative accessibility and usability testing process. It might be good to learn just by starting and building your own template from the ground up. One of the biggest concerns as far as accessibility goes with Captivate and anything else on the web is navigation. You really need to consider that all your users are not just going to be clicking through your content with a mouse. They might be using a keyboard or a touch control, whether or not they have a disability, but it might be because they have some sort of mobility impairment or they are blind and they cannot control a mouse, so they have to use tabbing and shortcuts on the keyboard to get around to various buttons and other elements on your Captivate slides. So an important thing to do is making sure you're arranging all the buttons and interactive elements in the correct order. So you can see here in the screenshot there is controls to organize your components by tab order. So you'll have button 1, 2, and 3. You could easily have those mixed up. So even though visually it looks like those buttons are in the correct order, on the back end the read order could be wrong, and someone tabbing might tab to the third button, then the first button, then the second button, which is just going to add a layer of confusion. So it's really important to have that tab order set correctly. Another thing we found out was adding visual focus to elements you're tabbing to is really important in Captivate, and it's a little difficult because we could not find a feature within Captivate itself to let you do this, to add, say, like a colored border to a button, so when a sighted user is tabbing to it, they know which button they currently have focus on. But we did a little bit of digging, and you can go into the CSS files of your output and add some custom code. That's a little bit too much to get into right now, but we do have some documentation on that I can point you to in a little bit. Going along with navigation, we also found that you can't just rely on tabbing and activating buttons using the enter or spacebar to work. We found in some browsers and using some assistive technology that functionality did not work as expected. You could not tap to certain buttons and you could not activate them as expected. So Captivate actually gives you a way to add customized keyboard shortcuts to every element or every button. So if you see in the screenshot, if you select any button on your slide, you'll have this whole menu of properties, including this action panel, where you can add your own custom shortcut. And it's really important to add shortcuts that aren't going to interfere with other controls someone might be using. So if you might have heard of the screen reader JAWS, this is for blind users to navigate the web, and there's a lot of custom controls in JAWS that they need to access headings, different elements, different regions of web pages. It's really how they get around a web page without seeing. So someone using JAWS needs a shortcut that's not going to interfere with their assistive technology. We found using a combination of Alt plus a series of numbers worked best. But you also need to remember that users are not going to just know that these shortcuts are there if you're adding your own custom shortcuts. So you either need to provide them in some other sort of documentation or instructions about your project or within the project itself. Again, you're also going to want to add these in the off-screen text for screen reader users so they know how to access the buttons they're navigating to. So we'll get into that in a second. We tested primarily with JAWS, which is probably the most popular screen reader other than NVDA and VoiceOver, which are also popular, especially because they're free. VoiceOver is built into every iOS device, and NVDA is for PC, and that's also free software. We also tested with Kurzweil, which is not necessarily a screen reader, more of a text-to-speech where it will highlight text and read that text out loud. And that also worked with the Kurzweil Read the Web functionality. Another question was, how did PowerPoint slides transfer over stand-up to accessibility? I don't know if we have done much testing with importing PowerPoint slides into a Captivate project, unless you have looked at that, Bill.
Yeah, I can speak to that very little, I suppose. That's on our list of things to explore. Well, what from I understand with how PowerPoint works with Captivate, you can, it works with it. You can import it so that the slides are within Captivate themselves. And I think if that's the case, you would want to look at a lot of these settings that Matt's talking about and kind of do your own check with different buttons, different text, and check the accessibility settings from those slides. Another way that it works with PowerPoint is that you can link PowerPoint slides to a Captivate project. So I'm not 100% certain, but if the PowerPoint that you're starting with is accessible, then I think that could work through that link with the current Captivate project.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that can be done to make sure PowerPoint slides are accessible. Microsoft actually has their own documentation on all their products that has a lot of good tips, and they recently updated it to show you what you need to do to make sure it's accessible for PC, mobile devices, things like that. So that's a really good resource. And I know there's also a lot of resources on the accessibility.psu website for PowerPoint and other Microsoft Office products. So talking about screen reader support, a really important thing to understand about Captivate is that it's not going to read any elements on a slide just as is, including plain text. You need to enable those accessibility features so you can add the off-screen text. And Captivate refers to this as the accessibility name and the accessibility description. And each element from buttons to images to text have these properties that you can fill out. And I know just the term accessibility name and accessibility description don't really mean a whole lot. So I'll get into that in a minute and kind of what you would put in each of those fields for certain elements. But these are going to be located under the item accessibility menu for each element. So what you do basically is when you're looking at a slide, you select one of your elements, and then over on the right-hand properties tab, and we'll demo this in a little bit, there's an item accessibility menu. and you bring this up, you'll want to uncheck auto label so you can fill in these yourself, because you cannot rely on it to auto label these to be anything close to correct for what you need. Another thing we noticed was, in a lot of cases, a screen reader will only read things in the order they were created for like text. So if you have a slide title and that slide title is located at the top of your slide, if that was the last thing you added to the slide and then just dragged it to the top, it's still going to read that as the last thing, and you really need it to be the first thing that's read. So we really recommend planning out your content ahead of time and drafting it, and then creating things in the order that you want them to be read in. I mentioned earlier certain things like buttons, you can reorganize the tab order, but for screen readers, they are really going to read everything in the order they were created in. So it's important to build out your slides ahead of time in that order. So I mentioned the accessibility name, accessibility description. This is just a kind of simple table I put together to demonstrate the basics of what you would need in each of those fields for different elements. So for a text, let's say you had just the slide title. The accessibility name could be some sort of supplemental information that it wouldn't be something that a sighted user would see, but it's kind of context information that a blind person might benefit from. So you could add slide title or main content, things like that, just to describe the regions of the page. The description should actually just be an exact copy of that text. So if you have a paragraph of text on your slide, just copy and paste that paragraph into the accessibility description, because I know it seems strange, but even something like plain text is not going to be read by default by a screen reader unless it's also in that accessibility description. So it requires a little bit of extra work every time you create an element, but they give you those tools to make sure each element works correctly with assistive technology. For a button, the accessibility name would be the number of the button and any text on the button. So say you had two buttons, one was restart and one was try again. So the first one would be button 1, restart, button 2, try again. In the description field, you could put additional information, like we talked about the shortcuts before. If you had shortcuts added to each button, you could say press Alt +1 to activate. So the whole thing, the screen reader will read button 1, restart, press Alt +1 to activate, and that will give someone who's using a screen reader everything they need to know. They'll know which button it is, which number in a series it is, what the text on the button is, and what they need to do to activate it. For an image, the accessibility name can be short alt text. If it's a decorative image, or if the image is already described in the text on the slide, you don't really need anything because the description is already there in another format. If the image is really complex and you need a really long description, you can instead put that in the accessibility description field, and that'll just give you a little bit more room to type out a longer description. In alt text, we usually think of 75 to 150 words, like a tweet or shorter. For a longer description, it might be multiple paragraphs if you're describing a really complex graph. And then for a link, Captivate will not, even if you make something a link in Captivate, it's not going to recognize that is a link to a screen reader user. It's not like on a web page with HTML where it'll be able to recognize link text and announce that. So for the accessibility name, you can just add that extra word link in front of the link text, just to let the screen reader user know that they're hearing a link, not just normal text. And someone wants to know if there will be a copy of these slides. I think we can get these posted. There will also be a recording available, and in a minute I'm going to actually show you a link to where a lot of this information is already posted. Yeah, right here. We actually have a much more detailed version of a lot of these tips we've come up with on the accessibility.psu website. So if you just want to take a minute and write that down and bookmark it, it's accessibility.psu.edu/software/Captivate. And with all this stuff, we're still in the exploratory phase. It's subject to change, but right now a lot of our initial findings are on that page. And just to kind of reiterate, what I just went over was really specific to Captivate, but it's also important to keep in mind that all the general accessibility best practices for the web that you might already be aware of are also relevant to Captivate. So for things like color, make sure your text and background colors have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. Make sure when you're formatting text, you're not making it confusing by underlying text and changing the color of it to blue if it's not a link. Don't rely on styles or color to convey meaning. Math is something we really have not explored, and it's pretty safe to say that math code like MathML is not going to work in Captivate. So if you have a lot of really complex math equations, Captivate might not be the best place to house that content. I'm sure there are ways to do it with simpler equations, but for really complex things, it's going to be difficult. I mean, you could use images of equations, but you'd really need to have good descriptions of those. And if you are going to rely on Captivate for math content, you might want to have an alternate format of that content available. And links, replace URLs with clear link text. Oh, thanks for posting that link, Bill. Now we're just going to get into a little bit of how to integrate Captivate with Canvas and some of our initial findings. We found that it's really important when you're publishing your Captivate projects to publish in HTML5 to ensure accessibility, like Bill mentioned in the past. And right now you can still publish some Captivate projects in a format that requires Flash, which that's going to really prevent a lot of the accessibility features that we talked about earlier. And you're going to publish it with SCORM settings enabled, which if you're not familiar with SCORM, it stands for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. And basically it's just a format that allows e-learning objects to integrate with standard LMS systems like Canvas. So here you can see some of the published settings under quiz and reporting. We have it set to either show us incomplete or complete rather than a pass-fail status. And we have it set to the standard, which is SCORM 1.2 right now. To enable SCORM in your Canvas course, you just go into your course settings, go into the navigation, and just drag the SCORM setting up into the main navigation. And just so you know, it'll show up as like black text, and you might think it is visible to students, but we've tested it and it's not, so you don't have to worry about that. And Bill's going to talk a lot more about how this whole process works.
Yes, once you get SCORM enabled in your course, you can go ahead and start to upload your content into your course. SCORM content and the Captivate content comes in as either graded or an ungraded assignment. You'll see in the screenshot that everything is ungraded assignment. In our first initial pilot, we didn't want the content to have an impact on student grades, so we decided to kind of play it safe and just have it be standalone content. Something that we're going to look to explore is a lot more of the kind of the quizzing features, some of the checking for understanding stuff that we can maybe get a report to the gradebook and see how that works and interacts within Canvas itself. But for now, we've just used Captivate content as learning objects and content for students. So once you uploaded your content into SCORM, you edit it and you can customize it just like you would a normal assignment in Canvas. So you can add any necessary instructions. For instance, something I would recommend, because the Canvas app itself is not perfect from usability and standpoint, I add these little kind of caveats before they kind of open the content to say, hey, if you're opening it up on a mobile device, use it through a browser rather than the Canvas app. You'll just have a better experience. You can add any kind of points. For instance, since this is an ungraded assignment that we were working with, points is obviously 0. I did complete, incomplete, and then do not count towards final grade, just to definitely ensure that everything is completely erased and doesn't have any impact on the student gradebook, because like we said, it is standalone learning content for students. Submission type is the external tool, and then this should be automatically uploaded and for you as far as your SCORM content, should that be automatically loaded in there. And then you can just click this Load Tool New tab, and I think that this just creates a better experience for students from a usability standpoint, and definitely on mobile. So how we're integrating this into courses, I'm the lead designer on the RN to BSN nursing program. So we really wanted to incorporate more decision-based scenarios, a little bit more of those kind of choose your own adventure sort of role play scenarios in the course. These kind of things have great application to healthcare, obviously, because it's a very skills-based discipline. So it kind of very lends itself nicely to this program. So in Nursing 440, we did 2 different scenarios, one about cardiac and the other one about coronary bypass. And that was our kind of our first initial foray into this, and we had some great success in student feedback. More recently, for this fall semester, we launched Nursing 352. It's a case-based course, so we have multiple mini Captivate branching scenarios throughout the modules to allow students to assess these case-based patients throughout the course. And again, for branching scenarios in nursing and healthcare or any field, it's used to reinforce key concepts, present students with authentic situations, let them make decisions in real time, especially related to caring for patients. And then any kind of simulation, scenario-based driven content, it's a safe place to practice decision-making through critical thinking. So as far as some feedback, in our first Nursing 440 pilot, this is just a screenshot as far as, did it help you apply concepts covered in the lesson? We wanted to kind of somehow judge their learning. So this is just a sample question from that evaluation, but overwhelmingly the students found this valuable. They liked having this content, probably opposed to either just written text or article readings. It was a little bit more interactive, as you'll see in our demonstration. So they valued that, which was great feedback for us in order to determine how we're going to move forward with implementation across World Campus and moving forward with other courses and other pilots. So as far as next step in our exploration, there's tons to explore. I feel like we've only really scratched the surface. We want to look at different video integration as far as using video for different role play decision-based scenarios. I think that could be really interesting. We want to explore how it interacts with the gradebook, as I mentioned, as far as how that could work. And there's tons of templates and interactions that we want to explore and look at. For instance, we just recently kind of went through a testing phase, an iterative testing phase, looking at a timeline interaction to have a clickable timeline as far as content goes. So we just wrapped that up. But there's tons of those different assets and different templates and interactions that we just kind of need to systematically go through and look at. All right, is this really accessible? How do we ensure it's accessible? Let's test it, and then let's document our best practices that we can use moving forward. As far as I mentioned, documentation has been very helpful for us, especially as we scale this. Continually to involve our design guide. It's kind of a work in progress. It's kind of living and breathing and constantly changing. So that's been interesting. Continue with student feedback if we can. Continue our evaluation, of course. That's always a best practice when it comes to any kind of design. And then figure out how we want to plan to adopt this tool across World Campus Learning Design. Should everyone have a license and be working on this? Do we want to streamline the process? How do we want to kind of move this out of pilot phase into adoption if we choose to go that route? And then lastly, looking for opportunities outside of, the nursing programs, kind of where we piloted now, but, where are those next programs and courses and things to expand the reach and use of Captivate across World Campus.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing so Bill can share his screen and bring up a little demo of Captivate and some of the scenarios he's been working on.
So I will first share with you what Captivate, do you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. I'll show you kind of what it looks like in the course and kind of go through that since that's the latest things we've kind of just talked about. So in our course here, you'll see our SCORM button. So in here, we kind of see all of the different Captivate content in the course. So like I said, we put them in as ungraded assignment. You can easily upload your file here.
Right now, we're just seeing your modules page.
We're just seeing the modules page. What about now? Oh, it's paused.
There you go.
Fixed it. All right. So I clicked on the SCORM button here. So as you can see, all the different Captivate content we have in the course right now. Like I said, we did it as an ungraded assignment. You can easily upload. The output files of these come in kind of a nice zip folder. So all you do is upload that zip folder in. It's very easy. If we're looking at some of the settings here, just like a traditional assignment, you can easily click your assignment settings. And you see where we kind of add that little note about a mobile device. Here's all of our kind of grading, because these are just learning objects. You can add a date to it. So in this case, I chose to add a date just to hopefully maybe reinforce that for students. Hey, I want you to interact with this. It's ungraded, but it's an activity. So that aligns with all the other activities that they're doing in that week. And again, the load in the new tab for usability. So we'll close out of this. And we'll see what it looks like within a lesson. And Matt, if you want to monitor the questions, then just feel free to interrupt me. And
Sure. Monique just said it'd be nice if adoption didn't stop at World Campus Learning Design, but if it went across the entire university. I think that's a large part of our goal, to make sure what we're learning is being passed on, and finding other people in the university who are already using it to share with them. Because like we mentioned, a lot of some of the accessibility nuances we kind of stumbled upon are not documented anywhere. We worked with people just on like the Adobe help forums to figure out some of this stuff, and they give you, the official documentation does have a lot of these steps on how you enable the accessibility features and where they are located, but we found a lot of what we needed to make them fully accessible were not documented anywhere. So like we said, we already have that documentation posted on the Accessibility at PSU website, but we really hope to just keep sharing as we learn more.
And to that point, we want to learn from you guys as well. So if you're doing work in Captivate, share with us. It was great when we did this presentation for the summer camp. Somebody who attended kind of gave us a tip for a setting that I just had no idea, couldn't find anything about it through Adobe's documentation, but it helped us better organize, multiple or naming individually multiple content within Canvas. For instance, in SCORM here, we were able to add these unique names, all the different case names. Before, they would just come in as general learning objects. So we had 4 learning objects, and it was always kind of difficult to manage, what the actual content is without having to click on it. So somebody found a setting within Captivate and shared that with us. So that was a great help for us. So, we want to keep the dialogue back and forth, definitely.
We had another question. Have you had any issues with managing revisions?
Not in particularly. I think that's something that we're looking at as far as rolling this out. Because it's kind of held to these 2 courses for now. Obviously, it's small scale. It's easier to manage. The content itself, it kind of stands on its own, and we don't have many revisions to it. But that's something as we're looking to adopt and expand and kind of figure out what that process is as far as how we can easily do that and manage that, as far as if the designers are doing it, multimedia is involved. What's the best way to do that? Where's the best way to store the core files? Right now, it's probably not an ideal situation. I have the kind of the core files if they need to be edited, but maybe they need to be in a central database somewhere, in a server somewhere that anyone can quickly access and grab and make those updates if necessary. So that's all stuff that we're going to be looking at as we move forward.
And someone also just wanted to know, Carrie said, I'd love to know how well it does with the gradebook in Canvas.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely on our list, and we're hoping to get to that soon, because that could be a whole different game changer as far as assessment goes. So just moving on, as far as the way it looks like, like I said, it comes in as an assignment. So here's our case study that we're looking at. So if I click that, you can easily load it into a new tab. Here's the button, and then here's what it looks like for students. So they can go ahead. This is our patient case study that they're working on. So they're doing their very basic kind of mini assessment. They can begin the scenario. So based upon the given case, they can kind of click through these different ailments. So we can go to pneumonia. Okay, here's overview of pneumonia. This is a link to an external kind of video resource if they want to learn more. So checking for understanding. Oh, maybe I think this is it. Nope, not quite. So then you can restart, and then you can go through, and you kind of go through that decision-making process again. So if I click on COPD, okay, do we learn more about it? Do I think this is the most likely cause based upon the symptoms that were given previously in this case? Yes. And then we successfully completed it. You can either go back and kind of explore again, or you can easily hit the exit, tab closes, and you're back within the course, and you can kind of continue throughout the module. So any kind of questions, I guess, on the Canvas side, because then I'll show kind of the back-end Captivate side next, if that's all right. All right. You see that, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. So here's Captivate, and here's the same case study we looked at before. So just, like we said, lay of the land. Here's your, very similar to PowerPoint. Very easy to add different slides. Here's, as far as interactions. I was talking about the different learning interactions. We looked at timelines. Here's a quick look. Were you able to see that pop up?
Yep.
Great. There's tons of stuff in here, different cycles, different pyramids, glossaries, all sorts of things going on in here to look at. It's a long list. But one thing that we just got done looking at was kind of this timeline feature. But there's definitely a lot to look at. So anyways, it's responsive. So here's kind of our desktop view. Here's kind of a tablet view. And then here's a mobile view. So when you design, I kind of went through and designed everything in desktop view, and then was able to kind of click through to the different tablet views and kind of slightly arrange things, make it a little bit better. There were times where I had images on here where if the image was decorative, it took up a lot of real estate in maybe the mobile view, so I could easily remove that and just keep it to the text, what's important for the students to go through. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the responsive design. As far as some of the accessibility settings to look at, here's a decorative banner image. So again, through the properties up here, here's our accessibility tab, and we just have a description, decorative banner image. Here's some text. We have accessibility name, it's our slide title. Accessibility description is the text as it is on the screen. And then here's a quick look at a button. I'll show more of these. Button 1, press Alt 1 for button 1. And then as far as the actions with the buttons, some of the settings that Matt had showed previously, under actions, kind of defines where it's going. Here's our shortcut. I'm on a Mac, so it's Option 1, but Option 1 and Alt 1 are the same. So that's why it says Option 1. But and looking at another version of a slide, again with the buttons, button 1, going down, here's button 3, Alt 3 for button 3.
So we just had a couple of questions come in. Jennifer asked, should this be done in addition to closed captioning? if the screen is heavy on text. If you don't have any audio in your slides, you don't need closed captioning. But regardless of the amount of text, like that whole paragraph under pneumonia right there, you would need to add that to the accessibility description. Otherwise, it won't be read. So you can see here, we just have an exact copy of that text in there. As long as you do all that, closed captioning is not needed. That's another thing we want to explore, add audio and video content. I know you can add captioning so it will actually show up in real time as the audio plays. But that's not needed in this scenario. Carmen asked, how do you add focus in Captivate? That is something where you actually have to go into the CSS files after you output your project. And we have some example code on that accessibility.psu website of how to add like a red border to your buttons. So it requires a little bit more knowledge, and that's kind of another thing we stumbled upon working with someone on the help forums, but there's not an easy setting in like the action panel here to add that to buttons. Depending on your browser, they might have some focus already, but we found in certain browsers there weren't anything, so we just wanted to add a little bit more to that. So Monique asks, should your description show both for accessibility for Macs?
Buttons, right?
Oh, both option and alt. I think just because you're on a Mac, it just says option, but it will work with alt button. Is that correct, Bill?
Yeah, that's correct. My keyboard on my Mac has option, and alt is kind of in that superscript above the button. When you click on these shortcuts, you see this little thing here. You can actually press the combination of keys. So I would just click option and 1, and it automatically comes up like that. So you can kind of customize the different keys you want to use for that. So because I'm on a Mac, it does that. I know when Matt has done it on his PC, it comes up alt 1, but it's all kind of in the same. And I think that's hopefully a standard between users, between Mac user, that alt and option are similar.
And then Jennifer just asked, she said, I should have asked if with audio, our closed captions and descriptions are not needed. It really depends. Like if you have audio on your slide and that audio is just someone reading all the text they're allowed, and you put that in the closed captions, then yeah, you don't need it in both. But if the audio differs from the text on the slide, you also need to add that text to the accessibility description. Also, they're kind of different things, because if closed captions are more for showing visually the text as it's being read out loud for someone who might have a hearing impairment, and then the descriptions are more for screen reader users, for someone who has low vision or blind to have it read by their screen reader aloud. So they are slightly different things, and we have not done anything that requires both yet, but I think that's something we want to test if we can come up with a scenario that requires some sort of narration or audio component to it.
Yep. I'll show you this one real quick. Here's the hyperlink and the way we did this one. As you can see, we just did link overview of pneumonia for that hyperlink. As far as use cases for Captivate, especially in these decision scenarios and role play, something that you'll commonly see when you're looking online for Adobe Captivate content or seeing use cases and things is, it's used in corporate environments for sales training, because you can kind of use these different characters and whatnot. So for instance, we're looking at, we can add these nursing different characters in different positions and whatnot. So if you're creating a scenario, where there's interaction between a couple nurses, you can add that in with audio going over top and maybe a conversation and talking about maybe ethics or something of that nature. In business, you can go through kind of a sales simulation with maybe talking to a customer and having, kind of these characters come up across the slide, get add a little bit more engagement or visual focus. From accessibility standpoint, is it necessary? You'd have to make that decision if it's, if that character's body language is, crucial to, the activity that they're going through or the decision that they're going to have to make. But largely, a lot of the time when I've used characters similar to this, they've been largely decorative and just used for, engagement purposes. I know we got time for questions. Is there anything anybody wants to see specifically?
Monique asked, do you need to add anything to denote opening in a new tab if you need the screen to do that? I think you're talking about when it's in Canvas. That button will automatically open it in a new tab, and that should be announced to a screen reader depending on how it's imported into the course. You can also import it just as an HTML5 object if you don't need SCORM, and you could just have it embedded directly on the page. So it might not necessarily need to be opened in a new tab depending on how you're handling that content in your course.
Yeah, we looked at it as far as kind of not opening in a new tab, but on the mobile device it was kind of tricky with all the different menus that are kind of within Canvas, and there's navigation upon navigation menus in Canvas itself. So just for overall experience and kind of quality, opening a new tab seemed to be much better as far as being able to kind of focus on the accessibility of having that one designated window and tab open with our content that the screen reader can focus on.
And someone said adding pictures across words causes a great deal of problems as far as readability goes. And yeah, that's true. I think a really big thing to be aware of is, just like anything you're building on the web, is the background where you're placing text and images, making sure it's not too busy, making sure you're not placing text over a really busy background, or placing images over text, or having text overlaid on a really complicated image. So readability is definitely something you want to keep in mind, and make sure you're using the right font choices and color choices to make everything really distinct. Any other questions? All right, well, I think that's all we have then. Like I said, there will be a recording of this available, and Bill sent that resource out in the chat. If you need any additional info, I can add my email to the chat. I don't know if you want to do that, Bill, and you can reach out to one of us if you have any other questions, and we love to share more with you, or if you're using Captivate, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Thanks. Take care.